Number one, God created us sexual beings. From the book of Genesis, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Now, there's only one way for Adam and Eve to have been fruitful and increase in number. How? How are they going to have children? By first having, we whisper it, don't we? Like it's a bad word, like there's something wrong with saying it. Adam and Eve could not obey God's command to be fruitful and multiply, increase in number, if they didn't have sex. God created it from the very beginning. It's just part of God's plan. Now, not only did God create sex, but he did it in a way that we can't just kind of separate it from who we are. Several years ago, a very nice, well-intentioned person gave me a Chrysler LeBaron convertible. I started it up. It ran. I test drove it. It ran. It had a full tank of gas. I thought, hey, this is great. So I signed the title. Actually, I gave him 4 quarters for the car. Signed the title, took it home, and he said, now there's this security system on the car, and every once in a while it goes off for no reason. And the only way to turn it off is just lift the hood, push this button a long time, and eventually it goes off. I thought, yeah, the car's basically free. It's got a full tank of gas. It runs. It's a convertible. It's fun to drive. No problem. Take it home. Sure enough, a few days later, the security system goes off. The lights are flashing, dead as a doornail, won't do a thing. I raise the hood. I push this button, probably 5 minutes pushing this button. Oh, the car started. I don't know if it had anything to do with pushing the button or not. The car started. A few weeks later, driving the car, I stop, turn it off, try to turn it on again. Nothing happens. Security system's going up. It's flashing. Well, that time it didn't start again for days, and I pushed that button for a long time. It didn't start again for days. 2 weeks later, it still wasn't starting. I called somebody else, and they said, yeah, I'll take it. And so I gave it to them. But the guy had told me, when I took this into the dealer to get it fixed, he said, the dealer told me that there's no way to separate the security system on this car. In other words, there's nothing to fix. He said, you can't take it off, you can't bypass it, you can't do anything about it. It's just the way this particular car is made. The car and the security system are one. You can't take it off. And that's basically the way we are with sex. God made us sexual beings. It's wired within us. Our brain is involved, other parts of our body are involved. Emotions, mental, physical, spiritual, all these things are part of the sexual beings that we are. And it's that way by God's design. God created us to be sexual. He made it to where it's just a part of who we are, and he cares what we do with it. God cares about our sexual behavior. All other sins a man commits are outside his body, but he who sins sexually sins against his own body. Okay, if we understand that God cares about how we act, God made us this way, let's begin to look at kind of God's design. What can we learn? What can we understand about sex and the way God made it? Number one, we are male and we're female, and there's a difference. The Lord God said, it's not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. So the Lord God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep. While the man was sleeping, he took one of the man's ribs and closed up the place with flesh. First operation going on right here. Then God made a woman from the rib he had taken out of the man, and he brought her to the man. Do you see the difference? There was a man. There was not woman yet. God makes him go to sleep, takes a rib, he creates a woman. Now we have man and woman, male and female. They're different. In creating man and woman, God did so specifically with the intention of, these two individuals are going to go together and they're going to have sexual relations. Genesis 2, we continue on here. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. The man and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. Notice the words, and they will become one flesh. Let's translate that into modern English. They'll become one flesh. That means they'll have sexual intercourse. The two will become one. That's the only way man and woman become one flesh. Now again, sometimes we have to kind of get past this idea, oh, sex is like bad or it's dirty or we're not supposed to talk about it. This is the way God made it from the very beginning. It's God's purpose. So we're male and female. You look around, you'll notice we got both here, and there are differences. We're intended to have sexual relations, and we're also intended to experience sexual attraction and sexual desire. Now, I'm not asking for a show of hands, but my hunch would be that many of us in this room have at some point in our life experienced some kind of sexual attraction or sexual desire. Let's go back to Genesis for a minute. In Genesis 29, there's this neat story about Laban, Jacob, and Laban's daughters. Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah. The name of the younger one was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes. Obviously something going on with the eyes. Nearsighted, farsighted, I don't know, but there was some kind of an eye issue Leah had. And it says, now catch this though, Rachel was lovely in form and beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel. Any of you guys ever been in a situation where you met some people and there was one that really stood out? Just, you thought, hey, wow, this is hot, or whatever term you want to use. The attraction, the desire, it was there. You noticed them. Jacob noticed Rachel. Same thing kind of starts to happen here. Now, here's the problem. He just meets this beautiful girl and he opens his mouth. That's not necessarily a good thing to do as soon as you meet a very attractive person of the opposite sex. And he says this, I'll work for you, talking to Laban, I'll work for you for 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel. Meaning, if you'll let me marry your daughter, I'll work for 7 years to do it. Laban says, well, it's better that I give her to you than some other guy. Wouldn't that make you feel good if you were Rachel listening to that? Well, I might as well give her to you as some other guy. I'm sure it made Jacob feel real good. He says, stay here with me. So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel. But notice this. He says, they seem like only a few days because of his love for her. Do you understand what that arousal, what that desire, seeing this beautiful young girl? He works for 7 years and they just go by. We'll come back and we'll talk kind of about that dynamic and what's going on neurochemically with Jacob right here in the 7 years just kind of flew by. But let's move ahead. Now, 7 years has just passed. Now we're at the next verse, but 7 years has gone by. Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife. My time is completed, meaning I've worked my 7 years. I've fulfilled my end of the bargain here. Okay, my time is completed and I want to lie with her. What's he saying? I worked for 7 years and now I'm ready what? We still just don't want to say this word out loud, do we? I've worked for 7 years. I'm ready to have sex with my wife. That's what he says. I'm ready to lie with her. We got to kind of translate this, get this out of biblical English, get this into the words we understand today. Again, here's my point. What's happening with Jacob here is exactly the way God wired him for things to work. He sees a beautiful girl. There is something that starts to happen. There's this attraction. There's a desire. And he says, 7 years I'm willing to work so that I can marry her. And he works for 7 years. They get married. And as God intended, when they're married, he's ready to have sex with his wife. Again, this is the way God made it. Now, let's make a transition here. Let's begin to try to build and understand, okay, if God made us male and female and God made us to have all these sexual feelings and God wants us to be able to enjoy this in an appropriate way, what do I need to know about this whole thing of sexuality to be able to go about it the way that's most enjoyable and that will truly be a fulfilling thing for me?